Good afternoon, Vandal fans, and welcome to another edition of Fourth and Downtown, the final radio program of the semester. I'm Josh Christam, the Argonaut Sports Editor, and I'm joined with Luis the Godfather Torres, the Vandal Nation web manager. It's our final show of the academic year, and we kind of got a little bit to talk about. We're going to provide you some brief updates on the final results of the men's and women's tennis tournament, as well as men's golf tournament, and then we're going to kind of discuss some of the highlights of the year, including team of the year, in our opinion, athlete of the year, coach of the year, and then our favorite memories of covering Vandal athletics this previous year. So first off, let's dive right into women's tennis. They faced Northern Arizona Sunday. When we last aired our program, they were still in the middle of their match. They ended up sweeping Northern Arizona 4-0 to win the title outright, and they will be facing Pepperdine, I believe, next Friday, so May 13th, and the time for that game is yet to be announced, but Pepperdine is the number 8 seed in the tournament, and they were given the right to host, so the Vandals will be playing in enemy territory against one of the top-ranked programs in the nation. But, Luis, it was great to see them come away with a Big Sky Conference title.
It was great to see them win the championship and provide that. At times when you have a lot of confidence and a lot of teamwork and everything seemed to be well crafted, that you're going to end up winning the championship. And the women's tennis were no exception to it. They got the job done, and they're going on to the big tournament.
Yep. And on the men's side, results didn't quite work out in the Vandals' favor. Idaho went in facing the top-ranked Wildcats of Weber State, and for a moment there, Luis, it looked like they might win. They lost a doubles point, but then rebounded in singles play. They were leading 3-2 with an opportunity just to win one last match and secure the Big Sky Conference title, but Weber State ended up pulling out those final two singles victories to win the championship 4-3. Now, what was your take just on the situation there?
I was basically heartbroken, and I was extraordinarily frustrated. Like, they had it, they were there, and there were still two more games, and then Weber State within, when they had that 3-2 lead, and then 10 minutes later, the game was over in favor of Weber. I was so disappointed, and I had to feel sorry for those guys because they really wanted it. They wanted to be back at that tournament so badly after covering the majority of the season. It's just the feels of being a semi-beat writer for men's tennis kicked in, and it's very heartbroken that they weren't able to do it, especially had they won. It would have been triple championship Sunday for the Vandals when you think about it.
Yes, and what he's referring to is the fact that the Idaho men's golf team came from behind. They were losing by 3 strokes to Sacramento State entering the final day of play. Ended up pulling out, I believe it was a 7-stroke victory over the Hornets to come away with another consecutive Big Sky Conference title. Daniel Sutton and Ryan Porch both had outstanding rounds for the Vandals. They both ended up falling 1 stroke shy of winning the individual title, but as a whole, the Vandals came away with the Big Sky Conference Championship in men's golf. So all 3 of those happened on Sunday. So men's golf and women's tennis, there's double championships there. And what Luis is referring to is the men's tennis team almost had a trifecta in pulling out their victory in the Big Sky Conference Championship, but falling just short. And so the Vandals come home with some hardware, not quite as much as everybody was hoping for, but still a substantial pull nonetheless.
Yeah, it was nonetheless, you cannot take away what the men's golf and women's tennis team done. They done what they needed to do, and they were able to have some reason to celebrate for, especially how the last week went down. And this was kind of like an uplifting spirit for the whole Vandal athletics program.
Yes. Now, so that's what's going on there. I believe men's tennis, I can find a quick update for you guys as far as that goes. I believe they were heading to Wisconsin for the Tom Gage Classic, but I will double check that right now. Yeah, they were seeded 12th regionally, and they're in the NCAA competition right now. They will play at the Black Wolf Run Meadow Valleys course in Kohler, Wisconsin. They will be the 12th seed of 13 teams in the Marquette Regional. That will be played May 16th through 18th. So if you're a fan of the Vandals in Wisconsin, definitely go check that out and support the program. But since it is our final show of the academic year, Luis, I thought it'd be a cool way to send it off by discussing some of the highlights of the year. And let's first start with our team of the year out of any Vandal sports program. Obviously, I think my choice would have to be the Idaho women's soccer team, posting such a turnaround season under head coach Derek Pittman in his second year with the program. They went unbeaten, through Big Sky Conference play with a 9-0-1 record, and then tore through the postseason tournament and heartbreakingly lost in penalty kicks in the championship game. And so I felt like that was just to have this team turn it around. They finished with a 14-4-3 record, which is pretty incredible, especially given the fact that the year before they went 4-14-2 to post almost a 10-win differential under a second-year head coach with a roster that only had one senior is absolutely incredible, in my opinion.
No, it is absolutely incredible how Derek Pittman and the whole group are able to play this extraordinarily well and kind of turn things around. They have just become like a team of inspiration, how all of them seem to work together. They love one another. They are passionate. They want to compete and win. And I see it's going to be really fun to see how they can capitalize from last season and move and continue to be extraordinarily better. I think they have a great chance. They have a phenomenal chance. I think this program is just going to continue to grow and grow, especially with the solid crop of recruitments that we got this semester and moving on.
Not to mention the fact that they return every single starter in their lineup. I mean, that's a formidable team. If you had a team that went unbeaten through conference play, returning everybody for the next year, that has to have Big Sky Conference programs worried.
Yeah, they're absolutely, they got to be the favorites to win the whole thing, not just the regular season, but the whole tournament. If you have everybody back, they got to fear. They probably are fearing Idaho right now, and I would not be surprised if we host the tournament for a second straight year.
Yeah, and I just think it's incredible. Going into the season, they were picked to finish 9th in conference play by other coaches in the Big Sky Conference. Nobody expected this, and if it weren't for kind of a sloppy field in the championship round of the postseason tournament, and then it going into penalty kicks, I feel like the Vandals should have come away with both the regular season title and the postseason title. But it's a heartbreaking way to end the season for that program. But they had my vote of the year for just the best all-around team showing improvement on the pitch for the Vandals. Now, Luis, we covered different sports this year. I'm sure you have a different opinion of who you think, which team you thought.
This one, I looked at it and just kind of saw as where they were, how were they able to overcome certain hurdles and obstacles, and how they were able to make it this far. I'm going to go with perseverance and strength. I think when you look at, I don't know who to pick. I think I'm going to go with the basketball program as a whole. For their women, they just were able to get this young crop of players like Taylor Pierce and Michaela Ferenc to really explode as the season went on. Obviously, you had like Christina Salvatore, Allie Ford. There were no quit in them. They just hung in there, and they were able to do some big things, win the Big Sky Championship, and played Baylor in the tournament. I think they have a phenomenal chance of doing well next season, as do the men's. The men's is just it's one of those stories that I just found fascinating. You had Perion Calendret and Victor Sanders, who were injured, that were out for midway of the season. They came back very late, and they somehow, some way, despite some circumstances, despite some costly losses, they hung in there. Nothing seemed to stop, and they seemed to be very confident. They were not too worried. They were able to play what they get. I think if they get it all polished together and make some of the adjustments that were sorely needed that prevented them to win the Big Sky Championship, I think the men's basketball team will be stronger than ever. I think those two have my eye, team of the year, how they're able to hang in there despite obstacles.
That's a good point, that the men's basketball team being able to overcome so many injuries. As you mentioned before, Victor Sanders broke his shooting hand. Perion Calendret had a lingering foot injury. Ty Egbert, I believe he sprained his high ankle sprain, and it was quite an ugly injury. So they were dealing with a number of obstacles throughout the season, and to finish third in the Big Sky Conference seeding is incredible. And to to earn a automatic first round bye in the postseason under those obstacles is incredible. So that's a very good choice as well. We had a number of solid programs throughout the year for the Idaho Athletic Department. So kudos to every team that had success in all the Big Sky Conference championships that they were able to accumulate. So I guess our next section, Luis, Athlete of the Year, and I'm going to start it off by saying Mariana Petrie, the freshman tennis player for the women's program. Just looking at her stats, it's absolutely incredulous. 22-2 overall singles record, along with a perfect 11-0 mark against Big Sky Conference opponents. I think the two opponents that she fell to were nationally ranked individuals, and the fact that she's a freshman playing exclusively at the number one singles position, I mean, you don't really see that for someone so young to take such an important role for the program.
No, especially when you're coming in to University of Idaho from a different area. You kind of like a culture shock coming in here on campus when you're from a different part of the country, and you're able to have instant success and able to hang in with the nationally ranked and be that dominant. There's no question that you don't really see it very often, and it kind of shows that the Idaho women's tennis team have a key component that will go places. I think she'll only become better, and she'll become the number one target for every opponent in the Big Sky Conference. They have to deal with, like, can they find a way to beat Mariana Petrie? It's gonna be fun to see how that progresses in the next couple of years.
And the fact she earned Big Sky Conference MVP honors for the entire league, not just for the postseason, but for the entire year as well. So we'd like to congratulate Mariana Petrie on her accomplishments, especially as a freshman. 3 more years of college eligibility here at the university. You have to imagine that she's going to come home with some more conference rings at least, and probably set some records for the most wins in program history.
Yeah, it's going to continue. And I will not be surprised when both of our days are done and when we look back and see here Mariana Petrie continue accomplishing new things, school records, conference, national, whatever it might be. We will not be too necessarily surprised. It will be kind of like showing that we have something. And I think it was our writer Brandon Hill that made a point like the Gem State found its diamond or something like that on Mariana Petrie's article. I think that it does fit in. It has a ring into it that just makes sense when it comes to Mariana.
Yeah, just reading. If you ever read through some of her accomplishments, it's incredible. She had a 14-1 record in doubles play when she combined with Lucia Vidillos, and she went 13-0 overall against conference competition, dropping just a single set in all finished matches. She has a winning percentage of 91.6%. It's Idaho's best all time, and then it's also the Big Sky Conference's top winning percentage of a single season. So incredible play from her, and I'm really excited to watch her compete next year for the Vandals and for many more years to come. Now,
yeah.
Luis, your opinion as far as Athlete of the Year?
That one is so extraordinarily difficult. If you went with a female, I'm going to go with a male athlete. And that one has been rather interesting. It's so hard to kind of give it to either Perion Calendar or Victor Sanders when they were able to perform. Especially early in the season, they were able to just pull exponential amount. It never seemed like they worked well together. They were like the cream of the crop of the basketball team. And especially, and obviously, like I mentioned about the injuries, who knew? The question was how they were going to do without their two top scorers. They did just fine. But when they have those two guys together, for the most part, they were able to be phenomenal. I think they will be an explosive threat going into next season.
Some good choices. Both of those guys were the top two scorers for the Vandals men's basketball team, and they both have Perion Kalinjet will be a senior next year, and Victor Sanders will be a junior. So the Big Sky Conference will have to worry about the explosive threat of the duo for at least one more season together. Now, the next aspect, Luis, that we're going to talk about, Coach of the Year. And this is a really tough decision. I think there's two individuals who should maybe deserve this honor. One of them is Idaho head coach Derek Pittman. When he first came to the program, the first year under his guidance, he inherited, a roster that wasn't exactly up to par. The team went 4-14-2. I think he was just kind of adjusting, trying to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of the individual athletes of his program. We saw what he can do after a year of experience under his belt. He leads the Vandals to a 14-4-3 record, the Big Sky Conference regular season title. Just absolutely turned the team around in the direction, and it seems like he's doing a great job of recruiting as well, especially from the California area. So, I mean, it's when you look at that, I mean, I struggle to find anybody else who can match kind of that turnaround. But another person who I think definitely deserves some recognition is Idaho men's basketball coach Don Verlin. Like we said earlier, both his two leading scorers, Victor Sanders and Perion Calandret, were out with injuries. I believe there was a 7-game stretch where they had to play without those players. And we can't overlook some of the contributions from like senior guard Chris Sarbaugh being able to kind of hold the team together in that instance. But a lot of it does have to go with planning on the coach's part, and I feel like Verlin did an excellent job in allowing his team to be prepared for the game plan and strategies of opponents during that time, and allowing the team to post a 4-3 record to keep them in the hunt for an automatic berth or an automatic bye in the postseason tournament.
Yeah, there's no argument. There's really no argument between those two choices. I say, if I were to choose, but they were definitely the two in my mind, with Pittman, how they were able to get the recruitment and see what they can work on, and Verlin kind of keeping it together and finding ways to make sure they improve on those. On a lot of those aspects, I just think those two have been. I would not argue those two choices. To be honest.
Now, who would your selection be?
My selection would have to go between. I may want to go with. I safe to say either Tim Colley and John Newley would be my two choices. Tim Colley in terms of kind of like, or even to some credit, Travis Flowick, the assistant coach and all that, especially in the running, how they were able to get kind of like the competitors, just as Kinsey Gomez, to name a few, to be competitive, find that passion, and to find the extra second or extra time to reduce to get better and better, and especially late in the season, how they are able. From an outdoor season, they just continue to keep getting better and better, and it's just been fascinating to see how they've done. And obviously, John Newley with the recruitment and kind of giving the players an opportunity to get some playing time, and he has like a good sense of when to give certain people the ball. Like I remember one of the games I covered when it was Michaela Ferenc had that phenomenal game with like 25, 26 points, and I think Newley said, and I think almost word to word, that she trusts Michaela to shoot the ball, shoot it from downtown and all, especially during those buzzer beaters. Like kind of like how his mindset was just astonishing. That it kind of continues on to this day as far as Newley's concerned. So those would be my two choices.
Some solid choices, and you can't overlook what Newley has done with the Vandal program. I think in the last 4 years, 3 conference titles in different divisions. Wasn't it the WAC and then the Big Sky Conference? Yeah. Leading the Vandals to, 3 separate NCAA tournament appearances. You just have to tip your cap to that guy for coming in here, essentially tearing down the program and then rebuilding it in a way that he felt would lead the team to victory, and he's done just that.
Yeah, exactly. He's done that, especially the transition from multiple conferences, which is not easy. It was not easy to do, and they were able to, the fact that when I came here, they were the WAC champions, and then now at this point, they're the Big Sky champions. Kind of shows how much the team has transitioned really well, and I think it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on who they recruit for next season.
All right, Luis. We're also going to talk about our favorite game of the year, and I have two of them. The first one is from women's basketball, and it was the opening game of the Big Sky Conference tournament for the women's basketball program. They were facing number 6 Weber State. The game was tied 83-83. It was the final seconds. There was a scramble for the ball. Taylor Pierce appeared to bobble it and then had a turnaround shot at the buzzer. I don't think anybody expected it to go in, but it dropped, and the Vandals survived a game where they weren't quite playing up to par, up to their usual standards. And to come away with that victory, I think really helped propel the team throughout the rest of the tournament and gave them the confidence to survive in that situation.
Yeah, and that kind of shows that anything can happen in a basketball game, and especially in college. The way it just happened, you just wonder how in the world Taylor Pierce made that basket, how in the world it made in, and it kind of further established the team after what kind of looked like a little bit of a bumpy road. Because not that I think it was like 2 weeks before that game actually happened. The question was, will Salvatore finish the season? And then she was able to come back and not worry about anything. And then the way they were able to do it kind of like a momentum boost. You couldn't write that in a movie, quite honestly. It just naturally happened.
Yeah, and it was an incredible buzzer beater. I believe it was on ESPN. There was highlights of it throughout the week, and that was just quite a scene. Because if you watch the angle of her shot, it's really difficult to explain how the ball was able to get to the hoop and to go through it without essentially touching like any part of the rim. It's just absolutely incredible. So that would be my first choice. My kind of secondary choice would have to be the Idaho football game against Troy. The Vandals went on the road and they had trouble right from the very start. Their plane was delayed for several reasons. They didn't actually get to fly out until, I think, just hours before the game. They landed. They went straight to the field. They did a little stretching, and then they essentially just walked right up and played a football game. And it was really rough and tumble game, not quite as offensive oriented as the Vandals usually are. And I think it's a testament that the defense was able to stay strong throughout the game. Vandals were leading 19-16 in, I believe it was the final minute of play. Troy attempted a field goal that I believe deflected off the post and gave Idaho the victory. And so for all that the team had to overcome the night before and kind of to get to the game and play, I think was incredible. And that would be my secondary choice for Game of the Year.
All right, for mine, as far as a beat writer, if I were to pick one from my beat, would be Idaho versus Eastern Washington, battle for the number one spot in the conference. It was senior night, and it was Idaho were on this hot run down the stretch after what seemed like they were not. They seemed like they were not going to go to the tournament. They were well below 500 in conference. Then all of a sudden, by October, they were just lining it up with the phenomenal performances, and then it all cultivated in the game against Eastern Washington, and they were able to pull phenomenal win. I think, if I recall, that was the one that went to 5 sets. Idaho were able to seal the deal, win on senior night. It was just a phenomenal atmosphere. Kind of see the seniors' progress from the start of the year until the end. They were able to have phenomenal numbers, and it ultimately led to us being number one in the North Division after the tiebreaker. Ultimately, the Vandals lost to Idaho State in the Big Sky semifinals, but that game to me kind of stands out in my mind how their performance at their late season run all came together on that night. Now my second choice would probably have to go. That one. I'm gonna focus on a club sport on this one. It's kind of give a little bit of props because I've done several club sports over the semester. It's kind of covering a game of Quidditch. You may be wondering why Quidditch? It's an interesting sport it's interesting when I look back at the history of how it kind of began. It's obviously from the Harry Potter series and kind of how it has grown to be a national club sport or even sometimes a collegiate sport. It's just kind of how I remember just being there the entire tournament, especially when the Moscow Manticores won against the Big Sky Sestros, which is kind of a combination between Boise State and Montana players. When they captured the snitch, it was the first all season to kind of see the anticipation, how exciting and kind of like how well bonded this team was kind of like a highlight in my eye from club sports. But easily, as far as the main game of the year in my eye would probably be Idaho versus Eastern Washington.
Okay, that's a good choice. Now, to end our show, we'll talk real quickly about the events we're looking forward to the most next year. And so I'll start. For me, I'm the most looking forward to the Idaho football game against Washington State University. Not necessarily for the competitiveness of the game, but kind of for the history of the Palouse. And I just think there's so much between the two programs, and I think it's great that the Vandals and the Cougars are kind of not reestablishing the rivalry, but they're making steps towards it. And I think it's great for the community as a whole, no matter what the outcome of the game is, just to be able to have those two programs meet on the gridiron is pretty cool. Obviously, they're not going to play in Moscow, but it's just such a short drive over for Vandal fans. Probably the closest you can go for an away game, and it'd be really cool to see kind of the two programs clash on the field. I'm sure there's some rivalry between the fans as well going on, not necessarily as much between the teams, but I think for those older generations, it kind of represents a nod to the past and to the meetings between those two programs in the Battle of the Palouse.
I think I'm going to have to go with that one. Pretty much just the Washington series as a whole, kind of playing back-to-back weeks in the Pacific North at the Evergreen State where I'm from. It's kind of cool to see, especially the Washington State one where we're going to see both teams show their potential, especially how Washington State were that hot last season. We're curious how they're going to do. And Idaho, obviously, just kind of have a close proximity, kind of like get a lot of fans on the road, which they haven't been able to get in the last couple of years. So it's nice to see. So that would be the one I'm looking forward to. And outside of it, I think the one event I'm looking forward to is kind of see how the basketball team does. Okay. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds, to see are they able to continue their momentum. Because it's kind of like, I'm looking forward to see how all the sports teams, I think all these teams this season were able to establish a lot. I think it may continue going into the future.
Yeah, I think as a whole, all of the programs here on campus really improved, and they had some spectacular performances, even the Idaho football team with a 4-8 record, quite kind of a turnaround season, and hopefully they'll be able to carry that into the fall as well, and to improve upon that and maybe reach a bowl game. So all these programs, all these conference titles, it's fantastic to have been able to cover these teams throughout the year, and I'm really excited and looking forward to watching them next year as well. And so with that, I'm going to give you one last pitch for all of our social media accounts. We are on Twitter, @VandalNation. You can see photographs, news, injury updates, analysis from reporters in the area. Essentially everything Idaho Athletics can flow through our Twitter accounts. We're also on Facebook as well, Vandal Nation. You can see all of our links for every single story that we post. We are also on Instagram, The Vandal Nation, and you can see here specifically the shooting assignments that our photographers are taking and some of their best pictures from those. And then we also have a Snapchat, The Vandal Nation, and it's going to be much more active and get some inside look at Vandal Athletics and the practices and some of the interviews with those players. So, and as always, you can pick up a copy of the Argonaut around campus or in the Moscow community, and I'd strongly encourage you to do that for this issue. It's much larger. It's, I believe, 10 pages, and we have a fantastic lineup of all of these profiles on our seniors and as well as some of the freshmen who will be anchoring the programs for years to come. Definitely check that out, or go onto our website, www.thevandalnation.com, where you can see the full uncut interviews with those athletes as well. So Luis and I would like to thank you guys for tuning in throughout the year. Luis, any last words for our listeners?
I say it's going to get, Vandal fans, I think the next couple years will be probably the funnest years you probably will watch. Not just one particular sport, but all around sports. Kind of enjoy the moment. Kind of when you see a Vandal Athletic, just congratulate them for their accomplishment or a job well done, especially how this season as a whole has been.
Well, that's going to do it. Vandal fans, have a very safe and fun summer, and we will be back here in the fall probably to talk a lot of football and volleyball and preview some basketball. So I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back, so look for us in the fall.
So we meet again in the fall.
Have a good summer, everybody.